Welcome to Jesus Changes Everything, a daily podcast dedicated to providing a fresh look at the ancient and glorious truth that Jesus not only reigns, but is busy about the business of bringing all things under subjection, that celebrates the wonder and the glory that he has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Well, I'm going to go ahead and be open about it and go ahead and do a curating your movie library without Lisa, though it was a movie that she and I and the boys saw together. But I don't want her to be here because I like it when we're together talking about movies that we liked, and I generally like it when we actually agree with each other. And this is one of those situations where we sort of ended up on different sides of the aisle. A month or so ago, the four of us went to see the new Batman movie. And, you know, I tried to be open-minded. I confess that, Batman is my favorite superhero, and he is that precisely because he's not actually a superhero. He's just a guy. And I remember and loved the first Michael Keaton version. I liked the second Michael Keaton version, and I kind of stopped paying attention to that particular run through. And then Christopher Nolan, his versions with Christian Bale were just wonderful. Just absolutely loved them. I thought Christian Bale was great. Again, when we had Batman versus Superman, I was willing to give that a chance, and I think that as a movie, it was good. As a change your life, it wasn't so much. Well, this particular now new version, and I confess too that this just seems weird that people just keep rebooting with different people and different kinds of series. But nevertheless, went to go see it thinking, hey, I've liked everything I've seen so far. Maybe I'll like this too. But I didn't like it. Didn't like it much at all. And I'm going to tell you why. I didn't like Robert Pattinson in the role. I didn't think there was nearly enough sort of Bruce Wayne to it. I thought it was, what's the word for it? I don't know. I think it relied on, a lot of action sequences that just didn't mean that much to me. Now, I will say that I was intrigued by the Riddler, and looking, I may try again, but I just didn't. I didn't want to know Bruce Wayne. Isn't that something? I mean, isn't that a decent, quick shorthand measurement of how well someone does? I understand that some people are bad guys and that we're not supposed to like them, though I don't think that's the case with Bruce Wayne, though I understand also that he's supposed to be conflicted, and there's the whole vigilante thing. Is that good or bad? My point is, I didn't like him. I didn't like him at all. I mean, when I say I didn't like him, what I'm saying is not that I didn't think he did a good job, though I didn't, but that I didn't like the character. Now, when Michael Keaton played Bruce Wayne, when Christian Bale played Bruce Wayne, both of those are situations where I thought, I would really like to be friends with this guy. I would like to know this guy. And I would enjoy it. I mean, quite apart from Batman. The same thing would be true for, I would argue, for the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. I haven't really seen any of the other ones except for the most recent one that has all three of them in it. But, call me crazy. I'd like to have an interest in the person of the superhero, especially in their normal, if you will, life. So yeah, it was dark. It was just not especially compelling. So I don't know. I'm not trying to be a prima donna fan, like those people who are so committed to the Lord of the Rings that they can't get themselves to admit that the movies were actually well done. Or the people who just, loved one iteration and can't stomach another iteration. That's not my perspective at all. I wanted to like it, but I didn't care for it. I think there's strength in all of the Batman movies in terms of exploring that question of vigilantism and exploring, where's the line between a love of justice and desire for vengeance? But again, for this particular Batman, I just didn't care. I'm not saying Robert Pattinson's not a good actor. I've not seen him in anything else. I've never seen any of the Twilight movies. But yeah, I was disappointed. I would love to hear from you if that was your take too. If you were, or even if it wasn't, if you want to come back and say, no, this was the greatest one ever, that's fine too. I'd love to see if maybe I missed something. I mean, I had to talk to a lot of people and say, I've heard good things about this movie, but I didn't like it. What am I missing? So if you got the answer to that, we would love to hear from you. As always, we're also eager for suggestions, what you'd like what you think maybe we ought to try taking a look at, or even warnings. Steer clear of this one. Thanks so much for listening. I have no idea how it's possible for me to even begin to give sufficient attention to Psalm 23 in the time that I have allotted to it. It is so important to me, such a deep, deep comfort to my spirit. It is one of those places in the Psalms where David's gift and the Spirit's qualities just absolutely shine brightly. We are, most of us, somewhat familiar with this psalm, and I guess maybe one way to make the best use of our time is not to spend too much time highlighting what we already know about it and how it is just such a joy. We've talked in the past about different sort of time frames or moves for David or other authors moving between fear and assurance, and whether or not the whole psalm is fearful, whether it moves from fear to assurance, whether or not it's just all assurance. Well, there's a mostly assurance here in this one, just an allusion to fear. But I want to stop at that place that just absolutely knocks my socks off. And that's this place near the end where David says of the Lord that he prepares a table for him in the presence of his enemies. You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies. Now, I think it's a healthy thing to practice habits of a redemptive historical hermeneutic, a biblical theological approach to, at the very least, stop and ask the question when you hear a word, an idea repeated, even if it's not in the place you're used to seeing it. For instance, if I said the word rock to you, probably most of you would think about something in your yard or something that you tripped over or something of that sort. But when we come to the Bible, we have Jesus called the rock. And because Jesus is called the rock, it's important for us to pay attention when Moses strikes the rock in the desert and water gushes forth. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's always the case that every word that's used in one place is somehow connected to how it's used in some other place. I'm just saying you need to stop and ask. And I think this is one of those places. What table does he set for David in the presence of his enemies? Well, I'm going to suggest that it is the table of the Lord. And I want to suggest that we recognize the connection between the eating of the sacrifice in the Old Covenant system and the eating of the bread and the wine in the New Covenant system. Because they're both include the same meanings. That is, when the animal is sacrificed, there is the imagery of substitution. That's why the hands are laid on the animal. There's the imagery of the substitution. The animal's dying in the place of the person. Now, this doesn't actually atone because animals aren't qualified to atone, but it points towards Christ. But also, after the sacrifice is made and it's burnt, if you will, the priest eats a portion of this sacrifice with the one who brought the sacrifice and his family. This is an affirmation of God's adoption into his family. This is eating with God, sharing table fellowship with the God of heaven and earth, which is also exactly what happens at the Lord's Supper, and I believe what David is talking about here. We can be at peace in the midst of all the tumult of war, in the midst of being attacked and in the frenzy of our enemies, because the God of heaven and earth invites us to his table. This is why I think, one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we celebrate the Lord's Supper every week. It's part and parcel of what we mean by resting on the Lord's Day. Because on the Lord's Day, we remember that we're safe, that we're secure, that our Father has this. We set aside our frantic attempts to make everything right. And we say, you know what, Lord, this is in your hands. I don't need to fight. It's your battle. I'm safe. I'm secure. The only thing I ever had to worry about was your anger, your wrath directed at me for my sin. And look at what you have put on this table. You've offered the Lamb of God, your very own Son. And you've invited me to this table. Oh, friends. Psalm 23, don't let it be simply something that is poetic. Don't let it be something that you stitch on a sampler and hang on your wall. Dive in and see what it tells us about the depth and the scope of his deliverance of us. When we recognize, when we feast at the Lord's table, where does it go from there? Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. When I know that I have peace with the living God, then I know that I'm not only safe in the future, but I'm safe now. I know I'm not only safe now, but I will be safe forever. I will sit at the Lord's table for eternity. You've been listening to the Jesus Changes Everything podcast, a production of Dunamis Fellowship, the teaching outreach of Dr. R.C. Sproul Jr. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe, which you can do at all the usual outlets, to tell your friends, and to spread the word. To learn more about the work of Dunamis Fellowship, please visit rcsproulJR.com. And join us next time on Jesus Changes Everything.